Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Benaker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. Chris, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Andrea, thank you so much for inviting me on. Looking forward to it.
Chris, your work centers around the concept of embracing simplicity and finding joy in less. Can you share a personal experience or moment that inspired you to pursue this path?
Yeah, it starts with a level of comedy, I suppose. So sometimes the most profound moments in your life can be quite traumatic or can be quite poignant. But for me, it was a certain level of comedy, and maybe that's what makes me quite relatable to normal folk. And for me, it was just simply tidying up and stepping on just some of my clutter inside my flat when I was getting ready to go traveling. And it was at that moment when I realized that, if the stuff inside my home could cause me physical pain, and I probably had too much of it, and trying to organize, personal belongings, tech, DVDs, CD cases, stuff that I never used, and trying to organize those into spaces that were my kind of sanctuary. And those things taking up space, causing pain. That was the moment when I realized that maybe I should try and relinquish some of this. And as part of that particular process of letting go of some of my physical stuff in my home, it started to give back. It started to give back on a transactional angle. So I started to get money for the things that I was selling. I started to get space. I started to get things like calm. Now I was coming home from work, and my living space that I'd spent so much money on wasn't causing me another level of stress. So I just continued on this journey of decluttering, basically. And then I was able to achieve the goal at that time of going traveling. So I couldn't have done it without a level of comedy and stepping on just an inanimate object in my home. So that was the piece that started this particular journey.
Thank you for sharing. And I know that journey led to you writing your book, Discovery of Less. Can you share with our audience some of the key principles from your book?
Yeah, it did. And this kind of, again, the funny story behind that is I never intended to be an author. It was never something that I'd aspired to be. I always felt that I had a skill in writing articles and things like that, but never anything to this length. But as I was telling my story to people, more and more of my friends and clients would go, "You should write a book about this. You should write a book about this." And I'd be, "Oh no, that's not who I am." And eventually, I caved in. I wrote a book, and found that it was actually a really incredible journey to go on. I'm currently in the middle of writing the second one now, but the first one ultimately is around all of the things that surround your life. The one go at life that we've got, that we know about, is around bringing stuff with us that adds value. And what we tend to do is we default to bringing stuff around us that doesn't add particularly much value. And so it's pretty much my journey from discovering that I could live so much happier with less, whether that was in the UK or whether that was going traveling or whether that was, transitioning into new careers and new labels and things like that. So it really was a case of understanding the physical, the digital, the mental and the emotional clutter that we carry around with us. And just as a bit of a lesson that at any point we can drop that bag that's full of heavy things. We can lay it down. And it's just a normal person's perspective of how I went and did that, with a little bit of, that kind of what I like to call 51% genius, 49% idiot. So the nice balance of intelligence and inspiration and influence versus very, very down to earth and relatable human being. that has flaws and makes mistakes. So hopefully, the feedback so far has been incredible. And I'll tell you one story recently, Andrea, that literally brought tears to my eyes. And I got a message on Instagram from someone who'd just taken 2 days to read through the book, and how they'd changed their life completely. I've had people that have emigrated from the UK to Australia. I've had people that have changed their careers, that have ordered huge skips, that have decluttered their life, that have actually saved their partner's life, which was never the intention of this book. This book was purely to just give people a little bit of a laugh and a little bit of hope that we can achieve so much more with so much less. But it's now become a little bit more that I ever intended it to be. And so it's quite an emotional read. It's quite a funny read, but ultimately, yeah, the feedback and the action off the back of it that people have taken has been quite overwhelming for me and quite humbling.
Congratulations. That's really incredible. In your TEDx talk, you discuss about unlocking true potential by liberating ourselves from busyness. Can you elaborate on how simplifying our lives can lead to a deeper sense of fulfillment and joy?
Yeah, the TEDx, the Less Busy, More Impact was, again, this is another one where I didn't anticipate it to be as heavy originally. So when I first kind of wrote it, I was seeing all of these busyness habits occur, our default to addition, and are spending a lot of our time doing things that didn't really add that much value. And I saw a lot of talent in my role as an executive coach. I saw a lot of talented people spend a lot of their time doing things that didn't really matter. And it was a case of originally being, how can we be more productive? How can we be more efficient and utilize the concept of minimalism and that decluttering? And so it's, again, coming back to it, it's relatable because anybody can pick up a thing and decide to let go of it. But now it was almost like, how do I translate that into a work context? So it was like, what actions and tasks and things do we do that is almost clutter masquerading as work? So, maybe too many meetings or too many emails, or so much, tasks that are very low value that don't help clients, customers, things like that. So that's what the concept of that particular Less Busy, More Impact talk was about. And again, it started with that journey of stepping on something and then going into a professional context and seeing the same thing, seeing the same consumer type behaviors in people where there is an inability to say no. So people really struggle to defend their time, create boundaries, and therefore that led to overworking and led to burnout. And a lot of the recent stats we've heard, especially in the UK and in Europe, and I think in the US as well, like we're breaking records in regards to people who are off sick through stress. We're downsizing our organizations, but not downsizing with tasks to do. So I kept seeing all of this, and as a disruptor, I thought that I would just use those same tools that I learned around letting go of things and do it at work and see what would happen. And funnily enough, nothing really bad happened. Like, it was, you get all of this time back and you're able to help more people at a larger scale and do things that are actually really important and let go of the things that are not so important. And that came out in 2022, but people have now used that talk as a catalyst to spark a new way of working in their departments. And again, it's quite humbling to have messages from people to say that they've just seen it and it's helped them recover from burnout, or it's helped them notice things in their team where people are overworking or they're overwhelmed with things to do, or maybe even behaviors that we see in ourselves, that we create a certain amount of overwork, not just for ourselves, but for everybody around us. So it really has been a little bit of a beacon for some people, but it was never intended that way. It was always intended to be a little bit of a poke at people that were, playing the hero all the time, and and the badge of honor that we would wear, and we would display how busy we were, just so we could tell people how important and in demand we were. But now it's almost a little bit of a potential antidote for our overworking challenge that we have right now with in different workplaces. So both the book and both the TED, they weren't intentionally to be as helpful as they are now, but I'm so glad that they are, and that they've grown and evolved into the world of work we're in now.
And as you're coaching various clients across the world, what common challenges do people face when trying to adopt a minimalist lifestyle? And how do you guide them through these specific challenges?
Yeah, I think there are certain traditions and conditioning that depending on how we've been brought up, and that's from a personal perspective, family, and in a professional context, that we just find it very difficult to let go of. Like I mentioned earlier, saying no to someone, it tends to have a very negative connotation to it, because how we've evolved from cave people days is that if you said no to the group dynamic, you got ostracized, which led to potentially more risk, more danger of death. No access to heat, no access to food, to safety. These behaviors are ingrained in us, and actually it's very, very easy therefore to accommodate the group dynamic. And so saying no to someone requires a level of intention and a little bit more critical thinking, which is why I think it's more of a skill than saying yes to everything, because saying yes to everything is really easy because it's just our default to do that. And there's been so many other studies recently around, if I were to ask a group of people, how do I make my meal better? If I'm having a soup, how do I make my soup better? Our default is I'd add more ingredients. That's what we would do. A little bit of extra salt, a little bit of paprika. That's what we'll do. We'll add some more things. And again, that's just our default. That's our nature. And another example with someone who's also very into the kind of less is more approach to life and work, Lydie Klotz, who is a professor, and he stumbled on this thing with his son where he was playing with Lego, and his son indicated that the bridge they were playing with was broken. And so they both said, all right, let's fix the bridge. And so Lydie Klotz, the dad, turned around to grab another brick. And by the time he'd come back, his son had already taken a brick off the bottom of the bridge and said, don't worry, Dad, I fixed it. And so he went, maybe this is something that we need to explore a little bit more. So through various experiments and studies and research, we found that we default to addition, we default to more, which in a way links all the way to our sustainability and climate challenges, because we love to consume. We just keep wanting more and more and more. And so to have an intentional way of saying, actually, let's see what we can do with what we have right now, or let's see how we can be just as successful, if not more, with less, that requires more thought and more challenge. But what it also does, Andrea, is exposes us to our truth. And deep down, I'm wondering, do we really want to be exposed to our truth? So if you had zero excuses to achieve the most amazing things, would you go and do it? So things like, we have these modern day first world problems, like I don't have time, or I don't have enough people, or I don't have enough money, and I will do the thing one day or after this. So, and a good example being, I'll go and learn Spanish, but what I'll do is I'll get this project out of the way first. And then something else happens and something else happens, and it always just becomes aspirational and it never really happens. If you take away all of those things, you've really got to learn Spanish. You've got to do it now. And then we're kind of, oh, right, okay, so I have to do the hard thing. So pondering more around less is a hard thing. And that's why this whole minimalism concept in a work environment is so tricky for some people to really simplify, because you then start to tap away at all the beliefs and all the tradition and all of the behaviors that we have been rewarded for in the past. Because if you say to people, well, I've worked really hard this year, I've worked, 17, 18 hours a day, I've really, really worked hard. Great. Here's a pay rise. here's a big bonus, congratulations. If we were to say that in a different context and say, I've worked less this year, you wouldn't get the same rewards because society doesn't reward us in that way. It rewards more. So it really does kind of tackle our default behaviors, but there's rewards for you as a person on the other side. More time with friends, more time with family, the ability to defend your time, do more of the things that really add value to your life. So actually the rewards can be incredible for you as a person, which then makes you a better person, which then ripple effects across all of your network and beyond.
And I fully agree with everything you have shared. On my journey, as a result of specific health challenges that I've had, brain operations, I've had to reflect on what do I say no to. So I truly, truly believe everything you have shared and the benefit of simplifying things and saying more no than we say yes to opportunities. But some critics might argue that simplifying one's life could actually lead to missing out on opportunities or experiences. What advice would you have for people on finding a balanced approach and not having this sense of missing out on opportunities?
Oh yeah, it's huge. The guilt and the FOMO, the fear of missing out. Yeah.
Exactly.
I have a line that I've used a few times. You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything. So you have to prioritize, you have to be selective. We have, 24 hours in a day, a third of that was probably sleeping. So you have 2/3 of the day where you get to choose, do I choose to work here? Do I choose to work somewhere else? Do I choose to spend time with my friends, my family? Do I choose to work on myself, my physical, my mental health, my emotional stability, my spiritual ability? Like what, these are the things where we're presented with so much now that we have to make choices. And again, we can all probably relate to the conundrum that we face regularly on Netflix. Like, how long have we spent trying to decide what to watch on Netflix? Even last night, I think I probably spent about 20 minutes flicking through going, that could be quite good, that could be quite good, that could be quite good, and then default into the thing I was watching 2 days ago. So it's almost like, how do we design our personal and professional lives that adds the most value, and being okay with letting go of the rest, and knowing that doesn't serve us or move us forwards or make us better. And we there is guilt, of course there is. We're complex human beings, but ultimately, setting those boundaries will ultimately make you the most incredible version of yourself you can possibly be. And whether that's decluttering friends, family that don't add value to your life, or maybe even bring toxicity to your environment, whether that is leaving a job you hate to one that you really enjoy. These are really intentional, critical thinking and big decisions. And that's kind of what we make with kind of minimalism concepts. Because I remember something so simple as a jumper or a t-shirt, and having so much attachment to that particular piece of clothing, and then starting to create scenarios into the future about, well, actually, when I go back to Montreal, I'm really going to wear that t-shirt, and that will work lovely. And so I've created a future that doesn't exist. But actually, the reality is, I have never worn this t-shirt. I've not worn it for 5 years. It doesn't even fit. So these are the kind of realities that we kind of look to approach in regards to our minimalist way of thinking and working, and really kind of questioning, does the thing I'm doing really make me a better person? Does it add value? Does it move me forward in my life? And if it doesn't, then it's up for maybe a question.
You mentioned that you're writing a second book. Share with us what that book is about and when you plan to release it.
Yeah, so the working title is Relentless, and the old less at the end, get it? Keeping on trend, on brand. And it's ultimately a professional book that will help people to work a little bit less. It's all backed up by research, by science, studies, interviews with clients, plus with a sprinkling of that kind of Lovett charm and, I suppose, wit and idiocy, the normalcy of a normal human being, working class background, that I look at things in a slightly different way. And so the aim is that potentially end of 2024, beginning of 2025, just talking to a couple of publishers as we speak right now, but ultimately there'll be really quick and simple ways to possibly change the way you work, that focus on simplifying or doing less to help us achieve more. And one of them is sleeping. So there's research to say that if we were to have a nap in the middle of our working day, it actually makes us more productive and perform at a high level throughout the rest of the day. But these, once again, having a sleep or having a nap during your working day is seen as negative. And there's the concept of sleeping on the job. It relates to being lazy, people slacking off. So I just kind of, as a disruptor, and just kind of challenge that a little bit and go, well, actually, the research says if we were to have a nap for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, that will give us 3 to 4 hours of extra hyper focus. And wouldn't that be great for your team who are, potentially really tired or, have worked really hard in the morning? So it's those types of little studies and science that hopefully will give people a little bit of a different view of how to succeed in our modern day working life by doing a little bit less, and ultimately reducing our burnout, reducing our stress, overwhelm, and having our better relationships with the people that are close to us, rather than being coming home from work or logging off and you're working from home and you being completely and utterly drained and giving the least of yourself to the people that are closest to you. So there's some interesting concepts in there, and it all links back to some kind of science, some kind of research, some kind of study, or some kind of interview where this has impacted people's lives in a positive way.
Beautiful. I wish you success with your new book, and I really look forward to reading it.
Thank you.
Chris, what brings you the most joy in your life today?
Great question. There's a couple of things at the moment. My dog, Daisy. So I rescued Daisy, the dog, about 5 years ago. She's a black Labrador mixed with a Weimaraner. And she's my alarm clock. She's my best friend. And I'm very conscious that she is one part of my life, but I am her whole life. So, I feed her, I give her comfort, playtime, waters, walks, toilet, everything. And I just adore her. So yeah, it would be remiss of me not to mention Daisy the dog when it comes to joy. From a professional context, I get a lot of joy out of the work I do, working with clients and senior leaders and individuals looking to grow in their personal and professional lives. I feel it's a privilege that I've managed to kind of half design this life and this work, and luck to kind of land where I've landed so far. But people bring me their deep challenges that maybe they've never shared with anybody, even friends, family, partners, things like that. They bring deep challenges and we work through them together. And I feel it's a real privilege that I'm able to help people on their journey. And so a good combination of my work being really meaningful, adding value, it has purpose, and something so simple as my dog Daisy every day, being able to take her out for a walk and seeing her sniff the grass or really get excited about when food's coming. Like, there's nothing so exciting. I've not seen anything yet that is so much fun as looking at a dog and knowing that they're about to have their dinner. Like, I just think it's brilliant. So I try and take a little bit of Daisy's approach to life in my life, and when bad things happen, which they generally do, is how do I turn it into a positive and keep moving on. So my work and Daisy the dog add an exceptional amount of joy to my life.
Beautiful. And what advice would you give to your younger self as a result of the current work you do today?
Be brave. Yeah, it's a really interesting position I find myself in, because I suppose I have this view of like you get there when you get there, and timing and things like that. But there's something in the back of my mind that says I'm late and I'm catching up still. So I could have been doing this for years, and I've only been doing it for like the last maybe 10 years or so. And but there's another part of me that says, well, actually, maybe you didn't have the emotional maturity or the growth mindset then, and so actually you needed to wait and you needed to take the time. But it was only because I was brave that led me to really leave the comfort zone, both from a personal life and professional life, and actually explore what I really wanted to do. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just went in a direction where I saw that people were making a difference, and it was by going, oh, maybe that's not for me. Oh, that I like that bit. Can I take a little bit of that and move forwards, and a little bit of what they do? And so it was like, there were breadcrumbs that people were leaving behind, that they were speaking at events, or they were coaching, or they were writing articles, and I like that. I like, how can I do this? And just linked my story back, and that's took a certain level of bravery. So that's what I'm continuing to try and do now. Is being brave has rewarded me, and so I need to keep being brave. So every time I feel myself I'm not being brave, or I'm in the comfort zone again, that's when I need to dial up my bravery. So, and this year is one of those times. I can feel it already. I can feel I need to be brave again. So hence why there might be more coming out from me in the near future. But yeah, the TED was brave. The book was brave. Going out and speaking on a regular, they're all brave things, and they all reward me in different ways. So that would be my advice to my younger self, is just be brave.
Beautiful. And what role do you believe purpose plays in our quest to find greater simplicity and be less busy in our lives?
I think it's huge. Yeah, I think it's huge. When you understand the things that are important in your life, it makes everything much more clearer. It generally does, both from a physical space perspective and from a mental space and career and things like that. And having that purpose, which, let's not beat around the bush here. Sometimes it's very difficult to find. So having a sense of the reason for being, and your purpose in life, gives you a very clear direction on the things that are going to help you to achieve that, and the things are not. But as someone who struggled to find their purpose, it did take a while, and it took a lot of discovering and exploring and searching and things like that for a purpose, or for something that was meaningful. So if you don't have it yet, don't worry. It just takes a little bit of exploring and trying out some stuff. And trying out some stuff might be letting go of things that maybe don't serve you, or maybe wouldn't serve a future, more evolved, more growth version of you. And bringing it back to something so simple as books. I probably had 50 to 60 books that I never read. I just never read them. And whether that was a case of I wasn't interested, or I didn't have the time, just never read the books. So I let them go. And being able to do that gave me a level of bravery. Go, well, if I can let go of this, then what else could I let go of? And you start to see different parts of your behavior and of your attachment to maybe identities and labels of the past, especially with jobs. We can get very attached to our label in our work context. Whether we need to start letting go of that and creating a new one is completely up to us. But yeah, finding that purpose and those new labels of what a meaningful life looks and feels like, yeah, it can start with just letting go of the smallest thing, and the snowballs from there.
Great. And what advice would you have for leaders that want to bring the principles that we've spoken about today within their organization? Where do they start, or where can they start?
Yeah, I would definitely start internally. What behaviors am I maybe subconsciously role modeling that looks at the future of this team, this organization, that are maybe need modernizing a little bit. So when we're looking at sustainable approaches to living and working, we're looking at reducing the amount of overwork we default to. It's looking at our behaviors about what are the things that I default to that could be causing a certain level of overwhelm. And there's some real classic and simple ones that we overlook when we say to people, can you get this piece of work back to me by the end of the day? And so you put so much stress and pressure on people, but without any sort of substance as to why that needs to be done by the end of the day. And a lot of stuff, unless it's life or death, probably doesn't really need to be done by the end of the day. Even in our National Health Service, which is creaking, we have it's quite public, our challenges with the lack of nurses, the lack of doctors, and waiting times in our National Health Service. Even in accident and emergency, there is a triage process. Not everything is an emergency. And so not everybody gets seen straight away. So depending if you turn up into the hospital and your leg's falling off, go straight into the operating room. We'll get that fixed for you. If you go in with something less than that, you might have to wait. And it's similar with our work environments as well. We believe that everything is so urgent and that everything is so important. But if we have a bigger picture of the world, we realise that we put some stress and pressure on our team, which then puts stress and pressure on their relationships, on their health, and actually our behaviours of doing that, it might be impacting and ripple affecting in a negative way. So as leaders, we really are vitally important to people's health. So by just being a little bit more mindful and a bit more intentional and stopping, saying what are the things that I do that impact my team negatively? Why do I keep booking in, hour-long meetings when we don't need an hour? If we need 45 minutes, let's take 45 minutes. And so these types of things, we have power to change, but it connects back to, if I'm busy, therefore I'm making a difference. And we need to change that. I need to be able to understand what outcomes am I achieving that is making a difference, and do those and get rid of the rest.
And what advice would you give to employees that are in an environment and where leaders do not embrace the principles that you have just shared?
Yeah, so this is really important for employees that are in a hierarchical system, is ask more questions. And again, this might be quite difficult for people to ask leaders or people of seniority, because again, we've been brought up potentially not to question authority, police, teachers, government. So now is our time now to really, in a curious way, to question things that land on our desk. Why is this needed by the end of the day? Do I need to attend this whole meeting? I've got 5 other things that I need to do, and now you're giving me 5 more. Which of these 5 things is less important now? And once we do that, it puts the onus back onto the people dishing out all of the work, and gets them to almost rethink and kind of go, oh, actually, you're right. We can't spend another hour on this. So I'd say get really good at asking better questions. That's one. And the second one is be disruptive. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So you have to make a choice. And part of that includes creating boundaries. So it includes things like defending your time. So not going to all the meetings all of the time. And actually being quite brave in saying, I can be available for half an hour. So what would you like me to do? Or, I've got 5 minutes here. How would you like me to present this? So it's basically using questions and bravery to create a little bit of a better work-life balance for you during the working day. And then what I've seen happen is people then copy, because they don't necessarily see any negativity happen, because you're being intentional, you're using your critical thinking, you're being curious. And then people will go, oh, well, if Chris still manages to produce incredible results, but hasn't been to half the meetings, that means that I probably don't need to go to half the meetings either. And actually, then the question is like, does this meeting really need to happen? Or actually, can one of the team go rather than all of the team go? And so there's so many little hacks that you can do, but it's a mindset challenge rather than a time-saving challenge or time management hack or anything. Because there's dozens. There's dozens of time management hacks. You can Google. There's 50 plus that are quite mainstream. You can implement any of those, but unless your mindset shifts into we don't need to do everything and we just need to do the things that add the most value, you'll start to create your own ones that are unique to you. So things like the 4-day work week, which is really popular at the moment and is being investigated in many countries, in many organizations, and most of the results have included an increase in people's well-being, a reduction in sickness, an increase in people's connection to their work, a reduction in attrition, and an increase in profit, which says to me, this is brilliant. But yet our default and our tradition is like, oh no, we still must work really, really hard to get the rewards we want, even though the data and the research says differently. So I would say just maybe take some time to think around, is this the best use of my time right now? Ask more questions and you'll uncover some incredible answers that you can implement into your own working world as well as your personal one as well.
And do you have any advice for parents that have their kids enrolled in so many activities, and when you're looking at the kids' lives between school and all the activities, they barely have any free time? So the kids themselves become super, super busy, and so do the parents. Do you have any specific advice for them?
Well, I'm not a parent, but only a dog parent. But I have, experienced being with partners that have kids and had gone through that. So there's a little bit of me around, again, questioning around what are we as parents and I suppose leaders of the family, what are we projecting? Are we projecting the things that we missed out on in our childhood or the things that we want our children to be involved in? But again, I think it just goes back to what I was mentioning earlier around you and your family can do anything, but you can't do everything. And it's so important that we look after our physical and mental health by getting good rest, good sleep, and having that implemented into a good week. Because that's how, I think it was astronauts. Astronauts had 100% better reaction rate when they had more sleep. High performers and athletes, they put rest and recovery into their performance. So you wouldn't have an athlete just continuing to run 100 meters every day. They need to recover. They need to rest their muscles. And it's the same with us, same with parents and teachers and leaders and things like that. We need to implement recovery time into our days so that we can be a really good version of ourselves for the people that matter the most, whether they're small people or big people.
Great, thank you. And Chris, before we wrap up, is there any final message or piece of wisdom you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a challenge, I suppose, and a little bit disruptive. Let's just say that being overly busy is really easy to do. We can all do it. Sometimes other people can make us really busy by sending us meeting requests, by sending us invitations to things, and we feel obliged to say yes to them all. So I would maybe just give a little challenge to your listeners and viewers around what can you say no to this week, to give yourself a little bit of space, a little bit of time, a little bit of resource just for you. Whether it's you go for a walk outside or whether you actually have a nap or read a little bit of your book or whatever it is, and what can you say no to give yourself that space? Because you can do anything, you can't do everything. And if you look around your living space right now, I would hedge my bets that there are some things in that room that you're in right now that probably don't add that much value. And would you be willing to let go of it so somebody else could get value from it rather than having to produce another thing in the world? You give your things that you're not using to somebody else. And if you're a leader of a team, how can you make your team more sustainable by doing less of the things that don't really matter that much?
Wonderful. Chris, it's been an immense pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Likewise, thank you so much.